Hello, everyone, and welcome to this podcast from the Light Review, where we are carrying on the conversation with Dan Griffiths, technical manager at Tamlite Lighting. Hello again, Dan. How are you?
I'm very well, yeah.
I'm all right. I'm okay on this sunny, rainy, whatever it is morning. It's all over the place. Now, I said to Dan, what would you like to talk about? And he went straight bang, let's talk about remanufacturing. Now, we are not going to talk about remanufacturing from the point of view of explaining what remanufacturing is. If you don't know, then you need to find out. So, we're going to assume, for the purpose of this conversation, that everyone knows what we mean by remanufacturing, because the benefit that we have is that for the next quarter of an hour or so, we're going to be talking to the guy at Tamlite who is responsible for designing light fittings that will or won't or may or might be considered to be fittings that are suitable for remanufacturing. Dan, how does that sound to you?
Yeah, that sounds plausible. I think
It's
that's fair.
definitely it's definitely
That's a
plausible.
technical answer.
That's
That's
very
a
good.
technical answer.
Yeah. Now I'm used to the idea of speaking about remanufacturing from the point of someone who's got no responsibility at all. It's that harlot's prerogative. I can say what I like because he's never going to come back and bite me. Dan is in the biting place, so I'm going to start off, and I might just sit back for the next quarter of an hour and just let Dan rant on because it could go like that. Dan, as a manufacturer, as
Mhm.
someone responsible for that, who's right at the forefront of brand new technology through LEDs, consequently new kind of optics because of the way you need to control that LED. What does remanufacturing actually look like for you?
Okay, that's a great opening question, John. To be honest
It
with
may
you,
be the only question, so off you go.
I think it's something we come across regularly. I mean, if we go strip it back to simple principles of what we try to do and what I think people should try to do is make whatever product you are making uh, in the most simplest format so that it can be remanufactured. That's phase one. And I think for us, really, it's taking something existing, quite often our own fittings that have been installed for numerous years, perhaps with older technology. We could be going back to reflectors, louvers, diffusers, lamp holders, or where it's a more modern install, but they just need the hardware upgrading. New boards, new drivers. For us, it's trying to package that all together. So making sure that not only whatever we remanufacture is tested and compliant, but suitable for the environment, and that's probably without going on a tangent and a rant. That's probably something that I am very passionate about. Is that we go to all this time. Someone hires a lighting designer for argument's sake. They have the design done. They pick fit, and because of the distribution, how it looks, we put that in the ceiling. It works great. We hit light levels. We hit everything we want. And then sometimes when it comes to remanufacture, people just chuck a bunch of LED boards in the fit and it goes out of and you've just wasted everything that you've done before. So that's in a nutshell, John. That is remanufacturing for me.
Okay. You raised a good point there about designing to standards.
Hmm.
Now, across the years, we've seen the requirements for lighting change. Um, Here's the obvious one through my long career. The introduction of what we used to call VDUs, visual display terminals, all
Yeah.
of those things, onto somebody's desk, and all of a sudden you've got a mirror on your desk, and you can't see because of the lights that's behind you. So let's redesign all the light fittings so that they don't create that kind of reflectivity in a screen.
Hmm.
And some of us were going, one day, it's the screen that's the problem. It's not the lighting. And of course, the screens were redeveloped so that they are essentially reflection proof. That changes the way that you need to put, or changes the way that you have to put light into a space because you're no longer having to create dark caves. So when we come to remanufacturing, we might be all of a sudden on your desk. Here's a load of fixtures that have come out of an office that's been there since the 1980s. Why not? But we don't need that light anymore. We need a completely different kind of light. So with that remanufacturing, are we are we able? Is it a practical thing to say? We know what you're asking. You're asking us to bring your light fittings up to date, but you're thinking technically, you're thinking we can drop out those fluorescent tubes and put in some LEDs. That's easy. But let's go back another step and actually look at what the light's meant to be doing. So are you
100%.
finding that conversation happening where, well, obviously you found it to the extent that some people don't get it and they'll just put LED boards in and regardless. But how far can we go in terms of, and I'm thinking ahead now, because you know that we're talking about things like circadian lighting and stuff like that, and those rules keep changing. And I'm wondering to what extent remanufacturing is going to become almost a sort of a redevelopment of fixtures rather than just a
Hmm.
remanufacture of fixtures.
I
I'll,
think it's a
I'll shut
spot on.
up now.
No, I think it's a spot on question, John. I think, really, I think you hit the nail on the head. You could be taking out fittings, like you said, VDT louvers. If we go back 10 years ago, everyone was talking about BSEN 12464 and what your candelas per square meter was, were they under 3,000 or 1,500? I've not been asked that probably in the last 5, 6 years. I don't even know if people know it anymore.
Mm.
That was a main requirement. Everyone now will focus on UGR. So, as well as that, it's other standards. Plastics that we're putting back in, making sure they're TPA rated. Don't just go put something. You know, we don't want to throw away stuff the way it works. Although if it's 10 years old, it's probably been battered by UV. It's fluorescent, but it's modernising a fitting and modernising a design. But I think that one of the key points of remanufacturing is modernizing it for now, but making it so that it can be modernized again in the future. Don't put rivets into, like, it's my pet peeve. I see someone do a post about, oh, great remanufacturing project, circular for the environment, and then you see pop rivets gone in. You go, well, that's going to be drilled out straight away. Um, you know, it's trying to be as simple as you can, and I think you've got to have that question with the end user. We had a project, and if the project's not right, walk away somewhat, which is a hard thing. We had a project with cast concrete ceilings not long ago,
Yeah. Okay.
specific diameters, 20 mil conduit running through the cast concrete. Fittings can only go in that place. Remanufacture, and we're like, so we looked at the project. Can we do it? We're like, you've got to understand, end user, if these fittings don't come out the ceiling properly, because they've been in for 20 years, we need a backup plan. But if we do, I need to take one back. I need to do the photometric testing, make sure that what I'm making is going to be suitable for the office now and the next 10 years. And I think that is a key conversation. It's not just about putting some boards in and you've half the energy. It's about making it suitable for the purpose that it is now.
And you're picking up on another factor there, and that is the physical design of the building, the
Hmm.
architectural aesthetic. Let's build it out of concrete.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's easy. That's not a problem because they're never going to go wrong, are they?
That's
And
it.
and so that's yet another factor in what
Hmm.
remanufacturing is going to mean. I'm wondering whether we think of a light fitting that you specify it, you order it comes onto a workbench, it's in a box, and there's a light fitting, you put it in, and then one day you're going to do something about it, maybe. But I wonder, can you imagine the time when basically every light fitting is the same as a motor car, as in you need new tires, put new tires on.
Yeah.
You crack a windscreen, you put a new windscreen in. It's just a fact of life that this is the way that this technology goes. Am I being fanciful with that, or do we think that that's a realistic possibility?
I don't think it is. I could understand why. If I'm honest, when we were in the fluorescent days or lamp days, I'll say with luminaires, because obviously we had HID lamps as well. You were always limited by the shape of the fitting. I think the hardest thing now for consumers, architects, end users, product designers, manufacturers, is with the advent of LED, is shape, form, factor, design is limitless. So I
Mm.
think to take that away from people, although it would be for the greater good, I would say, because then you can just, where you used to buy a T8 or T5 lamp, you buy an LED board and Ingo's LED board and you make them all the same. Would that work? Yes, but I think that takes away from where the industry has gone, and I don't know if people would want that. That'd be the problem.
Okay, okay. I guess what I was wondering about there is that there's an architectural an in, well, I'll put these outside as well, so they're not just interior, but there is one form factor that the LED has introduced which we'd never seen before in this quality, and that's of course the linear form.
Mm-hmm.
That sort of 20 mil wide and smaller. And I look at those, and I even look at the ones that I'm specifying today, and go, I'm talking about remanufacturing, and I've got here a lot of meters of what is basically double-sided tape on the back of an LED strip in an
Mm-hmm.
aluminium channel, and I'm wondering what's going to happen in 10 years' time when all of those LEDs or enough of those LEDs are exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of those where the form factor might come up and again bite our bum for us.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could design stuff in for that to make that so it can be removable, but all things like that add cost.
Yeah,
Whereas, and I think that's going to be the changing point as people are trying to become more, we see how much waste goes, to landfill, or even with fittings, they stripped out, scrapped, put on the side and left there and, goodbye one. It was nice knowing you. Whereas a lot of the carcasses are always going to be fine. It's just designers, product guys, and end users understanding the benefits of having something like that. If that was on a push fix tray, that on a spring clip, then you could take that tray out, put a new one in. You could make something that could be remanufactured for the future. There's got to be a balance to it, but you
yeah,
need those innovations to come. And I think innovations like that will start to follow as everyone's trying to be, reuse more and be a little bit more circular and look at their product design. 10 years ago, everyone had pop rivets. As I said,
mm,
that was a norm, Whereas now, well, I don't want to say no one used them, but you look at most manufacturers now, you wouldn't even dream of it. The way we make products now is a lot more focused on the installer and the removability of products, with the eco design where we have to put that on our instruction sheets how to remove a product and how can safely do it. So I think those things are coming more and more into a product designer's mind, and they're probably getting taught that more through universities now, whereas it used to be make something look really, really pretty. It's okay, make something, but that is part of the design process of how it's going to be remade in 5, 6 years, or 10 years, or 15 years.
okay. Now, what about here's a question that we need to answer. Um, One of the problems that we have in UK construction is the old equal and approved malarkey and value engineering or value de-engineering, whatever we want to call it. Is there I hesitate to say shorthand because that just sounds like laziness, but is there a form of words that we can use to ensure that a product that you've designed and you know that it's eminently remanufacturable, to put a crazy word, but there's a risk that that gets taken out of the spec and it gets replaced by something that, as we know, it looks the same. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
okay. What's that pop rivet doing there? But is this something that me as a specifier, I've got to take that on board and I've got to find my formal words to say, this fitting must be demountable. It must be
Mm-hmm.
deconstructible. All those D words, in the hope that the value engineer, the contractor, when they see that, and then when if something weird ends up on site, you say that's not equal and well, that's not equal, so it can't be approved. Is that something that you must be looking at that because
Yeah.
you're in that world. You're in that very risky world of putting in a lot of effort to find that you've been gazumped by somebody coming in at two-thirds of the price or something.
100%. I think it's something that equal approved saying is very broad. You could put an equal or approved product in that, for argument's sake, you could have a, I use office and industrial because it works for both. We could have one product which is a UK made Zaga board, Zaga lens, removable lid, completely remanufactured product that could get put in for a Chinese UFO high bay because lumens, efficacy, and distribution are the same, which is generally equal approved. However, it's not in the slightest. Same as someone who puts a flat panel in over a UK made backlit fitting. That equal and approved is normally is it similar but cheaper? Yeah, okay. It looked the same on the design. No one's going to know. It's just what's behind the ceiling. It doesn't matter. Whereas behind the ceiling does matter now, I think, and as we move forward, that is a key element.
So this has got to come back to the specifier, hasn't it? And it's you as well, because you are a specifier in a lot of the work that you do, because you are the one who's saying to the client, this is what you want to buy. So we have to create those specifications. I remember when a building spec would say in an office building, and the lighting specification was not even a paragraph. It was lighting will be done to 500 lux. And that was it. And that was all you had to work with. Now we need to go through that. We need to go through the idea of this is what the fitting needs to look like. This is what the performance is like. And it's then got to get into and oh, by the way, as a lasting asset to the building, it must also have these qualities.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I think for not to plug our later podcast, John, but there's a future topic, which I think would lend itself quite well to that. Obviously, a technical memorandum starting with 6, we'll say for now. That would lend itself a little bit to that because these things will be assessed and, it must not have a score lower than X. So then you at least know that, that might be one way to combat it. There might need to be something else that we put forward to kind of capture that information. Are the boards easily removable? Like I use the high bay as a good example. It's a potted driver normally fixed on LEDs with a glass front with a bunch of paste on the back of the LED board, thermal paste. That's not replaceable. It's modulable, it would be my word. It's not replaceable. It's not remanufacturable. Which it could be easily, but then that's coming down for a price point. Same with a panel. Okay, you could have a remote driver, but you're not going to get to the LEDs to really replace it. You're not going to build a new light guide, put it in. It costs more money to do that than it would be to buy a new panel for a lot of people. So it's not promoting the true message. So people have got to start thinking about what's behind a fitting and not what's in their ceiling, if you like. Yes, I can see it, but what's sitting behind it?
I like that. What's sitting behind it? I tell you what, let's do the TM66 next time.
Yeah,
because these things seem to be turning up into pairs. So we did our dark skies before. Let's move into TM66 because that's our deep dive into what this actually means for the for the specifier on one hand, but also for the end user. Because it's the end user who is being abused in this relationship, really, by ending up with something that is not fit for purpose. Sure. Right. Hey, our time's up again. How do we do that? Thanks, Dan. Again, a brilliant quarter of an hour. Absolutely fantastic. I hope you all enjoyed that. You've heard what we're going to be talking about next time, so that'll be in a few weeks. And I'm going to have to sort of brush up on my TM66 content. Get that form out and see what we can do with it. Dan, thanks for your time. Speak to you again soon.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.